Welcome to our deep dive exploring attachment trauma and healing.
Ooh, interesting.
We're going to be using Dr. Dan Siegel's audiobooks, Mindsight and The Developing Mind.
Oh, very good choices.
So we can kind of understand, how our experiences shape us in our relationships,
Right.
especially, those from childhood.
Yes.
So one of the key concepts is attachment styles
Yeah,
and how they impact us throughout our lives.
absolutely.
Could you give us like a quick overview of the four main attachment styles?
Okay, so we've got secure, avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized attachment styles, and they all come from the early bonds we have with our caregivers.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, for example, secure attachment develops when caregivers are consistently responsive and attuned to the child's needs, which creates this lovely sense of safety and security for the child.
But what surprised me was that, even seemingly normal childhoods
Right.
can result in insecure attachment patterns.
That's so true.
Yeah, like Denise, she described her upbringing as pretty average, but she still exhibited signs of an avoidant attachment style.
Yeah.
And, particularly when we talk about the topic of her brother's death.
Yeah, I think that highlights how attachment isn't just about, major traumatic events,
Right.
but it's also about these subtle, everyday interactions
Right.
that can shape our sense of safety and security.
So true.
And those seemingly small moments,
Right.
they can have a big impact on how we connect with others later in life.
Right. So let's say someone like Denise with an avoidant attachment style.
Yeah.
How would that show up in adult relationships?
Well, they might struggle with emotional intimacy or have difficulty expressing their needs.
Oh, yeah.
They might unconsciously push others away to avoid the vulnerability
Okay.
that comes with closeness.
Which brings us to another fascinating concept.
Yes.
Implicit memory.
Oh, yes.
Basically, the idea that early childhood experiences, especially before we have the language to process them,
Yes.
can actually become embedded in our emotional brain. And then they influence our behaviors without our conscious awareness.
It's like having this hidden script running in the background,
Oh, wow.
shaping our reactions and perceptions in ways that we don't even fully understand.
It's like a knee-jerk reaction to something in the present. But the root is way back in the past.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Greg.
Yes.
His anxiety around Sarah, even though she's lovely,
Right.
it seems to stem from those childhood experiences
Right.
with his mom favoring his brother.
Absolutely. So his past experiences kind of created this sense of emotional insecurity that's being triggered in his current relationship with Sarah.
Yeah.
So even seemingly small things like her running late can activate those old feelings of abandonment.
Oh, wow. So it's not that Sarah's doing anything wrong.
Exactly.
It's just that Greg's implicit memory
Yeah.
is interpreting her actions through the lens of the past.
That's it.
Yeah, and that makes me think of Julie's reaction when we asked her about her childhood. She completely dissociated. It was like she was transported back to that traumatic experience with her father.
That's a powerful illustration of how unintegrated memories, those experiences that haven't been fully processed can intrude into the present.
Right.
And really disrupt our lives.
Like anxieties, relationship problems.
Yes, all sorts of things.
Even physical symptoms.
Yeah.
Wow. It makes you think.
Right.
Are there any recurring patterns or strong reactions in your own life that might have roots in your past?
Interesting question.
Yeah, it's something to ponder.
It is.
So now let's move on to another concept from Dr. Siegel's work.
Okay.
The checker.
Yes.
This internal alarm system.
Our internal alarm system in our brains, yeah.
Yeah, so can you explain that a little bit?
So the checker is a naturally evolved adaptation.
Okay.
It's designed to keep us safe. And it involves, the brainstem, the amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex all kind of working together
Right.
to constantly scan for potential threats
Right.
in our environment.
Like always looking out for us.
Yeah, but as Dr. Siegel explains, sometimes this system can become overactive,
Okay.
leading to, chronic anxiety or even conditions like OCD.
Like with Sandy.
Yes.
Her checker was on high alert, right?
Yeah.
And it caused her to, engage in these compulsive behaviors like the tapping and counting.
Yeah, to try and ward off those perceived dangers.
Right.
It was really taking over her life.
Right.
But what's fascinating is that Dr. Siegel helped Sandy understand
Yes.
the checker as a separate part of her brain.
Right.
And by naming it Sam, she was able to create some distance
No.
from those intrusive thoughts.
That's so smart.
Yeah, and begin to manage its intensity.
So instead of being consumed by anxiety,
Right.
she can observe it, understand it, almost like taming a wild animal.
Exactly.
It's incredibly empowering.
Yes, it is.
And this idea of, understanding and managing our internal world
Yes.
is central to his concept of mindsight. So essentially, mindsight is the ability to see and understand our own minds, our thoughts, feelings, and sensations, but also the minds of others.
It's like having a mental flashlight
I love that.
that allows us to kind of illuminate the inner workings of our own minds.
Yes.
As well as the minds of those around us.
But how do we cultivate mindsight?
Yeah. How do we...
Where do we even begin?
Well, mindfulness practices are key.
Okay.
Things like the wheel of awareness or the body scan help us to train our attention
Okay.
and become more aware of our internal landscape without judgment.
So it's not just about calming the mind.
Right.
It's also about understanding the root of our emotions and behaviors.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I keep thinking about Matthew. He had a really challenging childhood, right?
Oh, you did.
Filled with neglect and shame.
Yeah.
But through mindfulness practices, he was able to observe those shame-based reactions
Wow.
with curiosity rather than judgment. And that allowed him to create what he called a solid place within himself.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah, a place of calm and clarity.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and so Matthew's story shows us that mindset is not about erasing our past experiences or pretending they didn't happen.
Right.
It's about learning to relate to those experiences differently.
Yeah.
With compassion and understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about creating a space for healing and integration.
And speaking of integration,
Yes.
that seems to be like the ultimate goal.
It is.
Bringing together the different parts of ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, and even our past experiences.
Yeah, to create a sense of wholeness.
So it's about seeing ourselves as a whole.
Yes.
Rather than this collection of fragmented parts.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and Dr. Siegel outlines 9 middle prefrontal functions that emerge from this process of integration.
He does.
And I think we should dive into those.
Yeah,
let's take a pause.
And come back to those 9 functions.
All right. I'm already fascinated.
Me too.
By how much this is resonating, and I bet our listeners are feeling the same way.
Yeah, for sure. This is just the beginning.
This is just the start of our deep dive.
Yes.
So stay tuned for more insights from Dr. Siegel's work in part 2.
We'll be back.
So welcome back to our deep dive into Dr. Dan Siegel's work on attachment trauma and the healing power of the mind.
It's amazing.
Before the break, we were just about to unpack the 9 middle prefrontal functions that emerge from integration. I'm so curious to hear more about what those are and how they connect to a greater sense of well-being.
All right, so these 9 functions are like a roadmap to a well-being.
Wow.
They include things like body regulation, attuned communication, emotional balance, fear, modulation response, flexibility, insight, empathy, morality, and intuition.
Oh, wow.
It's really remarkable how each one contributes to a more fulfilling and connected life.
Okay, so that was a lot. Let's break it down a bit.
Okay.
So what does Dr. Siegel mean by body regulation, and how does that relate to integration?
So body regulation is about being aware of and managing our physical sensations in internal states. So when we're integrated, we're better able to notice those subtle cues from our bodies.
Okay.
And respond to them in a healthy way.
Interesting.
So, whether it's recognizing that we're hungry or tired or stressed.
Right.
This awareness allows us to kind of take care of ourselves more effectively.
Right.
And it prevents those signals from escalating into bigger problems.
So it's like having a more harmonious relationship with our physical selves.
Yeah, exactly.
Which makes sense because, our minds and bodies are so interconnected.
They are.
What about attuned communication? How does that factor into the equation?
So attuned communication is all about being present and responsive in our interactions with others. Really listening and understanding the other person's perspective, not just waiting for our turn to speak. So when we're integrated, we're able to communicate in a way that fosters connection and understanding. Rather than creating conflict or defensiveness.
That reminds me of Denise and Peter.
Oh, yeah.
The couple who came to therapy, really struggling with communication breakdowns.
Yeah,
they were so stuck in these, reactive patterns,
Yeah.
With Denise withdrawing and Peter becoming increasingly needy.
Yeah.
Which just pushed her further away.
It's like a vicious cycle.
It was.
Fueled by their own individual attachment wounds.
Right.
But through therapy, they learned to become each other's advocates.
Oh, wow.
They began to understand each other's triggers and communication styles.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and they developed tools for navigating, you know, those difficult moments with more empathy and compassion.
That's so inspiring.
Yeah.
It shows that even deeply ingrained patterns can be shifted with awareness and intention.
Absolutely.
It wasn't about blaming each other.
Yeah.
It was about understanding those underlying vulnerabilities
Yeah.
and learning to respond in a more supportive and connected way.
Exactly. And as they cultivated those skills of attuned communication, they naturally started to experience more emotional balance.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, both as individuals and as a couple.
So emotional balance, another one of those 9 functions.
Yeah.
It's about being able to regulate our emotions and not getting swept away by them.
Exactly. Doesn't mean that we won't experience difficult emotions.
Right.
It's more about having the capacity to ride those waves without getting completely submerged.
Okay.
So you can acknowledge, you know, your anger, your sadness, or your fear without letting it, you know, control your actions or dictate your relationships.
That's a really helpful way to think about it.
Yeah.
And it seems like fear modulation.
Yes.
Another function on the list would play a key role in achieving that emotional balance.
It does, absolutely.
So tell me more about fear modulation.
Okay, so fear modulation is about recognizing, you know, when our checker, that internal alarm system, is getting triggered.
Yeah.
And learning to manage that fear response in a healthy way.
Okay.
Remember Sandy, who named her checker Sam?
I do.
That was a brilliant strategy.
He was.
For separating herself from those intrusive thoughts.
Right.
And gaining a sense of control.
So instead of being controlled by fear, we can start to observe it, understand it, which allows us to respond in a more intentional and skillful way.
That's it.
And this brings us to response flexibility.
Oh, yeah. Another one.
Another one of the 9 functions.
Yes.
So what does that entail?
Response flexibility is the ability to pause before reacting, to kind of step back and consider different perspectives and options.
Okay.
It's about not getting stuck in those automatic habitual patterns that might not be serving us well.
So it's about having that space between stimulus and response, that moment where we can choose how we want to react.
Yeah, that choice.
It's empowering.
Yeah.
That choice is fueled by insight.
Yes, another one.
Another one of those prefrontal functions.
Yeah. So insight is about understanding ourselves, our motivations and our patterns.
Okay.
It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Okay.
And making connections between our past experiences and our present-day behaviors.
So it's about connecting the dots and making sense of our own stories.
Exactly. And this ties in nicely with empathy.
Oh, nice.
The next function on the list.
Okay, tell me about empathy.
So as we develop, you know, greater insight into our own internal worlds, we naturally become more attuned to the experiences of others.
That makes sense.
You know, we can imagine what it's like to walk in their shoes, understand their perspectives, and respond with compassion and understanding.
It's like that saying, everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about, be kind, always.
I love that.
It's a reminder to approach others with curiosity and openness.
Yeah.
Recognizing that, you know, their behaviors might be rooted in experiences that we can't even fathom.
Right. And that empathetic understanding can really guide our actions and decisions, leading to a greater sense of morality.
Oh, interesting. So morality is about aligning our actions with our values.
Exactly.
Doing what we believe is right, even when it's difficult.
That's it. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness.
Okay.
And acting in ways that benefit not only ourselves, but others.
Right.
And the world around us.
And this seems to tie in so beautifully with intuition.
Yeah.
The final function on the list.
The final one. So intuition is that deep inner knowing.
Oh, I like that.
That gut feeling that guides us towards what's true and authentic for ourselves.
Interesting.
It's like a sense of alignment between our head, our heart, and our gut.
So it's not just about logic and reason.
Yeah.
It's about tapping into that deeper wisdom that resides within each of us.
That's it. And as we cultivate these 9 prefrontal functions, we naturally become more integrated, more whole, and more connected to ourselves and the world around us.
Yeah, it's like all of these functions are working together to create a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
They do.
And that brings us to the concept of transpiration.
Oh, yes.
The process of expanding our sense of identity beyond our individual selves and connecting to something larger than ourselves.
It's a beautiful concept.
It is. I'm very intrigued to explore that further.
Okay.
It seems like a natural progression from everything we've been talking about.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so tell me about transpiration.
Transpiration, it's about recognizing that we're not isolated individuals.
Right.
But we're part of this vast web of interconnectedness.
Okay.
So it's about expanding our circle of compassion to embrace all living beings.
Wow.
And the whole of nature.
That reminds me of young Tommy's realization about death.
Yeah.
He said, when I die, I just become a part of everything.
Oh, wow.
Such a profound insight from a 12-year-old.
Yeah, he intuitively grasped this concept of transpiration.
He did.
And that realization, brought him a sense of peace and acceptance rather than fear.
Right.
So it's a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty and loss, we can find comfort in knowing that we're part of something larger
than ourselves.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It is.
And it seems like this concept of transpiration aligns with the principles of mindfulness and compassion.
It does, absolutely. As we cultivate, awareness, understanding, and connection, we naturally begin to experience this sense of belonging to something greater than ourselves.
So it's a shift from me to we.
That's it.
And Dr. Siegel is suggesting that as we develop mindsight and integration, we naturally become more compassionate and altruistic, more inclined to contribute to something beyond our own individual needs and desires.
Exactly. And this brings us back to those 9 prefrontal functions.
Oh, okay.
Those functions are not just about personal well-being.
Right.
They're also the foundation for secure attachment
Okay.
and healthy relationships.
So it's like a two-way street. Secure attachments foster these positive qualities, and in turn, these qualities enable us to create more secure and fulfilling relationships.
Exactly. It's a virtuous cycle.
And this is where transpiration comes full circle.
Yes.
As we cultivate mindsight and integration, we create this ripple effect.
We do.
That extends outward, influencing our relationships and our contributions.
Yeah, to the world around us.
Thinking back to Matthew, who found that sense of purpose in working to heal the Bay in his community, or Peter and Denise, who, were moved to support families, facing similar challenges to their own childhoods.
Yeah.
It seems that transpiration can manifest in so many ways.
It can.
It's about aligning our actions with our values, recognizing that our well-being is intertwined with the well-being of others and the planet.
Right. And Dr. Siegel even introduces the idea that our minds, through intentional focus and practice, can actually influence the course of cultural evolution.
That's powerful. So we're not just passive recipients of our experiences.
No.
We're active participants in shaping our own well-being and the world around us.
We are.
But where do we go from here?
Yeah, what can we do?
What practical steps can we take to cultivate mindsight and integration in our own lives?
I think a good starting point is simply cultivating awareness.
Okay.
Paying attention to your internal signals.
Okay.
Your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, and your impulses.
So it's like becoming a curious observer of your own inner world.
Exactly. And we've talked about some tools for doing this.
Yeah.
Things like the wheel of awareness and the body scan.
And as you become more familiar with your internal landscape, you can experiment with different techniques for regulating your emotions.
Yeah, like naming your feelings.
Yeah.
Or engaging in a compassionate dialogue with your checker.
Right. And it's not about achieving perfection.
No.
Or eliminating all difficult emotions.
Right. It's about creating a more spacious and accepting relationship with your inner experience.
And as you cultivate greater self-awareness, you can also begin to practice empathy and perspective-taking with others.
Try tuning into their nonverbal cues.
Okay.
Listening with your whole being.
Right.
Considering their thoughts and feelings with a sense of curiosity and openness.
And if you find yourself getting caught up in reactivity, whether with yourself or others, remember to pause.
Take a breath.
Take a breath.
And reconnect with that sense of spacious awareness.
That we've been talking about.
Yes. And those small moments of repair, those instances where we choose connection over reactivity, can have a profound impact on our relationships and our own sense of well-being.
And as we strengthen those connections, those moments of, we naturally begin to expand our circle of compassion.
We do.
Contributing to a more just and caring world.
This is the heart of transpiration.
Yeah.
The culmination of our journey from self to we. It's about recognizing that our well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others and the planet.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a question.
Okay, shoot.
What practices or shifts in perspective might help you cultivate greater awareness, connection, and compassion in your own life?
Yeah.
And how might you leverage that greater sense of we to make a positive difference in the world around you?
That's the question.
We'll be back after a short break
to
explore these ideas further and delve into some final takeaways.
Sounds good.
From Dr. Siegel's work. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. We've covered so much in our deep dive into Dr. Dan Siegel's Mindsight and the developing mind.
So much.
From attachment styles and implicit memory to Mindsight and transpiration.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has been.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on how all these pieces fit together and what key takeaways, our listeners can apply to their own lives. It is remarkable how Dr. Siegel weaves together these seemingly disparate threads.
I know.
Neuroscience, attachment theory, mindfulness to create this tapestry of understanding about the human experience.
It's amazing.
And the beauty of his work is that it offers practical tools for navigating the complexities of life and cultivating greater well-being.
One thing that keeps coming up for me is this idea of uncertainty.
Oh, yeah.
He emphasizes that uncertainty is like an inherent part of life.
It is.
Yet we often resist it.
We do.
Clinging to this illusion of control.
Yeah, and I think that resistance can actually fuel our anxiety and suffering.
It can. Yeah. Our brains are wired to seek patterns and predictability.
Right.
But life is inherently unpredictable.
It is.
And when we try to control the uncontrollable, we end up feeling anxious, stressed, and disconnected.
Exactly.
It's like those examples we were talking about before, like Sandy's fear of swimming pools.
Right.
Or Peter's constant worry about rejection.
Yeah, their checkers were working overtime.
They were.
Trying to create a sense of safety in an uncertain world.
Right. And, those fears, while seemingly irrational, often stem from those early experiences where safety and security were compromised.
Right.
So Peter's inconsistent caregiving as a child and that emotional silence in Denise's family, after her brother's death, created this blueprint for how they navigate uncertainty in adulthood.
It did.
So it's not that their fears are unfounded.
Right.
They're rooted in real experiences.
Yeah, but by understanding the origins of those patterns, by bringing awareness and compassion to those early experiences, they can actually begin to rewire their brains.
Oh, wow.
And create new, more adaptive ways of being.
So it's not about erasing the past or pretending those difficult experiences didn't happen.
No.
It's about integrating them into a larger, more coherent narrative.
And that's where the power of Mindsight comes in.
Right.
By cultivating a curious, open, and accepting stance towards our inner world, we can create a space for healing and transformation.
And as we practice Mindsight, we become more attuned to the minds of others, fostering empathy, compassion, and a sense of interconnectedness.
Dr. Siegel suggests that this intentional cultivation of Mindsight can actually have a ripple effect.
Wow.
Influencing not only our personal lives, but also the course of cultural evolution.
That's amazing.
It is.
So it's a powerful reminder that we're not just passive recipients of our experiences. We're active participants in shaping our own well-being and the world around us.
We are.
So if there was like one key takeaway you'd want our listener to walk away with, what would it be?
I would say it's the importance of cultivating Mindsight and embracing integration.
Okay, right.
By developing the capacity to observe our inner world
with
curiosity and compassion, we can begin to heal those old wounds, create healthier relationships, and live more fulfilling lives.
I like that.
And as we connect more deeply with ourselves, we naturally extend that connection outward, contributing to a more compassionate, interconnected world.
That's beautiful.
It is.
So as you go about your day, dear listener, remember to approach your experiences with a sense of curiosity, openness, and compassion. Notice those internal signals, those thoughts, feelings, and sensations that make up the fabric of your being.
Beautiful.
And as you engage with others, try to see them through the lens of Mindsight, recognizing their humanity and the complex interplay of experiences that have shaped their lives.
Yes. We're all on this journey together. We are all interconnected.
We are.
And as we cultivate Mindsight and integration, we create a ripple effect of healing and connection that extends outward, touching the lives of those around us, and contributing to a more compassionate and just world for all.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
I hope so.
Until next time, keep diving deep.